This exercise is called flexion abdominals position. What you're going to need is a wall, and the box in this setup, for the purposes of this video, is set up to be my imaginary wall. And that's why I've got a support just behind the big box, so that when I put pressure with my feet to the wall, the box doesn't topple over. You're also going to need a cushion. If you don't have a cushion, a block will do, and a foam pad or a thin cushion for the base of your head. For flexion abdominals position, you're going to be lying down on your back with your feet to the wall and your knees really generously bent in a deep hip flexion, which means knees considerably over the line of your belly. And this exercise, whilst it's predominantly the use of your lower body, will reposition your pelvis. For many of you, it will also have an activating feeling in the lower legs, particularly those with any foot and ankle dysfunction. And in repositioning and activating the lower part of your body, it will significantly realign the trunk of your body, meaning your spine, your shoulders, your neck, and your head. So for flexion abdominals position, the main job that we're trying to do is re-educate our hip flexors. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to lie down on your back with your feet and knees hip distance apart to start with. And then what you've got to figure out for yourself is the distance that you can be to the wall with your bum, but in a way that your knees are over the line of your stomach, but without your pelvis lifting up like so. I'll just move this cushion out of the way. Your pelvis is supposed to be completely grounded. So if you find that your ability to flex, which is really bend here into the hip, is limited, what will happen is you will feel like you're squashed because you haven't got enough space between the part where your feet meet the wall and your hips to be able to keep your sacrum grounded, in which case you're going to have to move a little bit away from the wall. If you've got to move away from the wall, don't be surprised if you've got to compromise on the amount that your knees can bend, but start first as a priority with your whole sacrum, lower back, your spine, your shoulders down on the floor. Then mark out how much you can bend your knees and keep them over the line of your rib cage. I'm using a block or a foam pad under my head so that the rib cage and the top of my pubic bone can stay in the same plane and I'm not popping my rib cage. Now, for the position of your pelvis, the number one question I get asked is, am I supposed to tuck my pelvis or am I supposed to release my pelvis, which means kind of letting the pubic bone drop towards the floor. Okay, so I'm going to highlight those two positions here. If you were to tuck your tailbone, you would kind of have to do this. And even just by doing it, it's going to feel very odd because you feel like you're pushing yourself away from the wall. So that's not what we're looking for. What we are looking for is with a good sort of command of your feet to the wall, you're simply allowing your pelvis to release. But you're going to know, by virtue of the ground holding your pelvis, the maximum capacity to which your pelvis can drop. It won't go more than it ought to, okay? Then once you're there, you're gently going to find the sort of tripod of your sort of both your feet, your big toes, pinky toes, and your heels. And you'll gently, with about 1 to 2, 3, 4% of effort, push your feet into the wall. Then you're going to grab your cushion, place it very gently just between your knees, not between the thighs. Really important that you place it between the inside of your knees. Then what you're going to do for the active hold of this exercise, I do anywhere between 4 to 6 minutes. And if I really feel the effect and I'm already starting to feel something in my left kind of lower leg, I try and hold it for maybe a couple of more minutes. You're not actively squeezing this block. You're not trying to murder the cushion or the block. You are simply trying to hold the cushion or a block if you don't have a cushion and prevent it from falling down between your thighs. Okay, so the compression, if you like, of the cushion is very light. And then you've got your arms out in this sort of 45-degree position, palms facing up. Back of the fingernails pushing down into the ground. And you're simply breathing. in through the nose. Exhaling gently through pursed lips. Making a note that your ankles and your knees are in the same plane. So your ankles aren't going to be lower. They're going to be completely in the same sort of plane as your knees. You can see that. And also, you're going to make sure that your feet aren't sort of turning out like a duck. Really pay attention to the feet being parallel. You're just holding the cushion, maybe about up to 5% of a sort of compression there with the inside of your knees. Arms out 45 degrees, palms up. Fingernails gently pressing down into the ground. Head and neck are relaxed. And almost instantaneously, my left shoulder starts to quiver. And I can feel this immense sort of action, burning, activation, a real sort of loud call from the lower part of my left leg. This is flexion abdominals position. Amazing to help you reset your pelvis, re-educate the hip flexors, the major movers of the body, and to help you release and reposition the trunk, which is anywhere from your spine, your shoulders, your neck, and the top of the head. This exercise is called wall frog. It's one of the many variations of frog that you can do. And for me personally, it's one of my favorite variations, simply because it doesn't just work the inner thighs, but it also gets me into my hips, my lower legs, and therefore helps me open up my shoulders and release any tension I may have in my neck. For wall frog, you're going to need a wall. You're going to also need a cushion or a foam pad for underneath your head. And this setup here is simply to demonstrate to you what a wall would basically look like, or for me to be able to use a wall for the purposes of demoing the video from a side on, okay? So what you're going to do for this exercise is you're going to come lie down on your back. And the number one sort of setup anomaly, I'm not going to call it a mistake, I'm going to call it an anomaly that I see, is people kind of put their bottom too close to the wall. And in doing so, what that will instantly sort of promote is the sort of rib flare, the popping of the ribs, and this massive gap in the lower back. So the first thing you're going to be aware of, and you're going to have to maneuver based on your ability to externally rotate the hips, which is basically take your knees wide, but also the ability of your feet and your ankles, is you're going to have to judge how far away from the wall you can be. So for me here, I can get a little bit closer. You can see here I'm maybe just about a foot away from the wall in front of me. And what you're going to do for wall frog is, to the best of your ability, you're going to bring both of your feet together and try and Velcro each of your 10 toes together, the toe mounds and the heels together. The exercise is actually largely, 99% of it is driven by squeezing your feet together, by pressing the soles of the feet together. And most of us, when we put our feet in this position, we find it extremely difficult to let go of all the tension in our inner thighs. So what this exercise is actually helping us do is use our feet, restore function in the ankles and in the lower legs, to allow us to relax the abdominals, as well as relax the inner thighs and our hips, to promote an external rotation in our hips, which will help us reposition our pelvis. And we're going to hold here for the duration of the exercise. But if you, like me, want to make this a little bit more intense and a little bit more lower body driven, you simply take your feet higher than the line of your knees, which is what I'm going to ask most of you to do to start with, because simply by bringing the feet lower, what you'll find is that your feet separate and you put the compromise in the rib cage by being sort of arched in the lower back. So bring the feet high, squeeze the soles of the feet together, allow the hips and the knees to drop out. Palms are open, arms 45 degrees. Relaxing every single muscle in the body except the soles of the feet. And what you'll find is, for the first minute, the sort of battle is between the inner thighs, the hips, and the soles of the feet. But after a while, as you breathe, you start to sort of put the function into the lower legs, the ankles, the feet, and allow the hips to just drop out. This is called wall frog. This exercise is called hip crossover stretch. It's one of my favorite exercises because for me, it doesn't just open my hips, which is the intention, and it doesn't also for me just work the trunk rotation, so the rib cage rotation, but it also releases a lot of tension in my arms and in my pec region, which for many of us, we don't even know we hold. So one of the most important components of this exercise is the hand position and the push of the hands down into the floor and away from the body, as well as then the twisting. So you're going to need to come down onto your back in a hook lying position, but without anything obstructing the head or the neck, so you're completely flush to the ground. And then what you're doing is you're having your hands outwards in a T position with your fingers really, really nice and wide. I don't know if you can see me there. That's good. And from this position, what you're going to need to do is you are pressing this palm down, both palms down into the ground, but also away from the body. And in order to sort of feel this arm bone not roll upwards, you need to feel that the arm bone stays neutral and down to the ground. Then for a left-sided crossover, you cross the right leg on top of your left thigh. But what you need to make sure is that you hold your pelvis neutral. So don't just passively try and open this hip to start with, the top hip. You've got to keep that right knee over the line of the hip, so it almost kind of feels shut to start with. And then pushing both hands down into the ground. To take your left-sided crossover, you bring the right foot over and the left thigh down towards the left side, pressing the palms down and away from the body. You will look over towards the right side. Holding this position for 2 minutes as you compress the right foot into the ground and open this top hip. So notice that my right thigh doesn't come to the ground with the left thigh. It's completely going in the opposite direction. And I'm breathing in towards this whole of the right side of my rib cage here. And then I'll repeat the same thing in the right-sided crossover. That's the hip crossover stretch. Exercise is called sitting floor with block. You're going to need to come and sit on the floor with your back and your bottom really shoved up against the wall. This position itself is challenging for a lot of people because it's not allowing you to compromise in your knee or your ankle load. And by virtue of you having to stick your bum right up against the wall, it's really going to test what we call the dynamic tension in your body, which means the front and your back side of the body. For many people, even just sitting like this, you'll notice that maybe your knees come up off the ground and you'll find it difficult to extend your legs. Or if you try and extend the legs, you're going to need to sort of compromise in your upper body. And many of you will find it really hard to keep your shoulders and your head back to the wall. But don't worry, the whole exercise is designed to restore that function. So first, what you're going to do is keep a block the highest setting, and you're going to straddle the block between your ankles and your big toes. For many of you, that's going to be a struggle to start with. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Mine's by all means never perfect, because my left foot is very different to my right. And you're going to simply just start off by trying to compress that block between the ankle bones and your toes, and then keep your palms up, facing forwards and upwards on your thighs. Now, if for many of you it's hard to keep the palms up without sort of crouching forwards like so, what you're going to need to do, and this is just a recommendation, you're going to place 2 blocks just outside the sort of line of your IT band towards the sort of halfway point of your thighs, in a position that allows you then to rest the palms to the sides of your thighs, and you'll notice that it feels a bit more comfortable and it feels like you're being able to sort of sit tall and with your shoulders back. You're going to hold this position, actively pulling the feet towards you. As you compress the block, there's a lot happening in my legs right now, and you're simply trying to relax your abdominals and let the position of the exercise, extend into your mid and your upper back. This is sitting floor with block. This exercise is called sitting floor with block plus pullovers. So what you're going to be doing in this exercise is you're going to come into your sitting floor with block exercise, which is a block on the highest setting, being squeezed or compressed between your ankle bones and your toes. And your bum and your shoulders and your head are being pinned back towards the wall. Ankles are active, so they're being pulled into a dorsiflexion for the duration of this exercise. And you're going to start by interlacing your hands without letting the hands slip apart and without bending your elbows. You're going to start by reaching your hands towards your knee line. Then from here, with your belly and your abdominals relaxed, you're simply going to pull the arms forward slightly and all the way up to try and just tap your thumbs to the wall. For many of you, as you start to get just towards the headline, you're going to feel like your hands need to separate and your elbows need to bend. If that starts to happen, you don't go further than the position at where you can keep your arms locked out and your palms stuck together. And then you come down, and then you exhale to lift. And then you come down, and you exhale to lift. And you come down, and you lift. And you're going to do 3 sets of 10 repetitions of the sitting floor with block with pullovers. This exercise is called hook lying knee pillow hold. And hook lying means you're going to be lying on your back, knees bent, feet parallel, with your back on the floor. And for your knee pillow hold, all you're doing is you're going to need a cushion, and you're just simply trying to hold the cushion right between your knees. And what this exercise is designed to do in a really gentle, passive way is release any kind of dysfunctions in your hips, in your pelvis. So if you have like a wonky pelvis, back pain, you know, anything that you're compensating with in your pelvic and your hip area, your sort of leg and your thigh area, that'll start to unfold. It will help you activate your feet and therefore help you recover from any foot-related dysfunctions and pain you're experiencing. And with you lying on your back with your arms 45 degrees, we're passively restoring rib cage and shoulder position as well. It's one of my favorite exercises, and I use it a lot, especially at the moment during pregnancy. But also if I've been on my feet, for instance, you know, walking a lot, playing a lot of paddle, this exercise, even just for sort of 10 minutes, can really help me feel restored in my whole body. And I'm hoping it will do the same for you. So we're going to start in this hook line position, on your back, knees bent, feet hip distance. Make sure your feet are parallel, not turned out, not turned in, but also your feet are not too close to the back of the thighs or too far away. Really find that nice neutral spot where your sacrum feels really neutral underneath you. Grab your cushion, and for the hold of your cushion, this is really important, we're not squeezing actively, okay? We are just holding it with enough sort of pressure, if you like, to just keep it right between the knees, but enough to sort of save it from falling down between your thighs. So if I walked past you in this exercise and I pulled the cushion, I should be able to just yank it away with very little ease. And then your arms are coming 45 degrees, fingers wide, back of the nail beds into the ground with a cushion or a foam pad underneath your skull. Make sure the cushion or the foam pad isn't touching your nape of the neck. The neck is free. So it's really sort of flat surface of the skull on top of the cushion or the foam pad. And then for your hook lying knee pillow hold, you're just relaxing here. With the fingers wide, you're feeling all of the nail beds into the ground, and breathe. Feeling each of the toes down into the ground, from the big toes, the pinky toes, and the center of the heels, with a gentle pressure of your feet to the ground. You're just trying to release any tension there may be
between the knees and in the pillow squeeze. And what will happen in this exercise over a period of time, you may start to feel some quivering, some shaking, and this is very natural. It's also a very good reaction, which will tell you that muscles are starting to release. And once they start releasing, they're able to receive stimulus to be able to start being reconfigured. So don't try and stop any shakes. Just keep your whole body relaxed, your abdominals relaxed, and your shoulders relaxed. And just focus on your breathing here. This is your hook lying knee pillow hold.